Let me pull him out. Get him on the ground. Get him on the ground. Sir. Pulse.
What's his medical history?
I don't know. They just picked him up 10 minutes ago.
You just picked him up?
Yeah, he's like, I need some money. Can you put me to work? And I said, yeah.
He's got a pulse. He's breathing, so.
Can you grab gloves?
He's not breathing. I don't know if drug related. Give me a flashlight. I can't see his eyes. Yeah, they're pinpoint.
So now pretend that you're swimming this time and your brain says, hey, you need to go get some air. And so you swim to the surface, but this time your head hits that floaty that your friend has been floating around on, and so you have to continue to hold that breath a little longer than you were originally planning. And so then your brain starts to panic, saying, hey, I really need air now. We really need air now. So you're holding your breath, you're swimming around, you're looking for that open air, you're panicking. Finally, your head comes out onto that surface, and you take a really big relief gasp, right? So let's imagine a third time when you're swimming around, your brain says you need air, you start to panic, you really need that air. It's screaming at you to go get air. And you finally break from that surface. And this time, you don't get to breathe. This time, you continue to hold your breath, you go back underwater, and you keep waiting. So now imagine that that air is actually that drug that someone is addicted to. That is what that intense craving is actually like. It is your brain telling you that you need this to survive. And if you can kind of even a little bit imagine what that urge must feel like, you can see what it must feel like to be in an addiction cycle, which is why this is a disease. It's your brain is craving it, and your brain is rewired to only want that drug, and yet do anything to get that drug.
There's a lot of things that occur when a person first overdoses on heroin or opioids. And not all overdoses are fatal, but the most important thing is to react as quickly as possible. Not everybody dies from an overdose because a lot of people are around and somebody makes a decision to act in a responsible fashion to get help, which is very critical because time is really important. But when a person initially overdoses, things like loss of consciousness or unresponsiveness to like outside stimuli. Initially when a person injects heroin, what happens is they inject heroin, they initially will go on what is called on the nod, which is once the heroin enters the system. So a person has a tourniquet, they find the vein, they inject the heroin into the vein, they release a tourniquet, and then now the heroin is going into the system.
Narcan, for those that don't know, it's all good. This is a medication that can be given to someone who's experiencing an overdose, and specifically an overdose by an opiate. So what Narcan does is it comes in and it kicks off these opioids off the receptors and allows that person to start speeding up again, so to speak. So it allows them to breathe, which is really, really important.
Been a paramedic for about 15 years now as well, and that was where I first received my training to use Narcan. And from that time, I don't know, probably more than 24 times had the opportunity to use Narcan on patients who, were suffering from opiate overdose of some sort.
And being a police officer, I've been in situations where we've Narcan people 3 times in one day. A few weeks ago, we actually had a situation where a dog was brought to a vet because the dog was having problems, and one of the officers thought, since the family used heroin, maybe the dog got into a batch of heroin at the house, and so we actually Narcaned the dog, and the dog responded and came out of it.
Well, Narcan technically can be given a number of ways, and like I said, back when I was a newer paramedic, it could only be given through an intravenous method. Luckily, with the advancements that we've had in medical administration over the years, we now can give it intranasally, which is a much safer way to do it, because as you can imagine, somebody who may be suffering from an opiate overdose might be slightly combative, and handling a needle around somebody in that state is a responder safety issue. So we're much safer now with using the intranasal version. So it's a very simple process. Not sure what's being carried by different agencies and whatnot, but typically it's carried in a pre-filled syringe with just a small triangular shaped foam tip, I guess I'll call it, on the end of the syringe, and then it's given slowly into the nasals so that it can be absorbed into the body that way. The absorption into the nasal is a lot quicker into getting into the bloodstream than it is into the IV. When it's concentrated into an IV, it still has to be pumped throughout the body by your heart, obviously. When it's in the nasal, it's already into a capillary bed and it just disperses fast. In my mind, we've had to use it more than anybody wants to. That's really the bottom line, and the unfortunate part of things is that it's a tool we have that we never want to use. We want people to be safe on their own. We want people to not have heroin and opiate type addictions or encounters that lead to a Narcan administration, especially because we know that that's a life-threatening event.
He's not breathing. I don't know if drug related. Give me a flashlight. I can't see his eyes. Yeah, they're pinpoint. Go left nostril. Five, 6 Narcan deployed in the left nostril. There he is. 3 minutes.
Hopefully we will reduce use of opiates in general, and so we won't need Narcan as much. But I would like to see it be, co-prescribed with every opioid prescription coming out of a doctor's office. And even now in Monroe County, we've distributed so many doses of Narcans through trainings like this that it's pretty relevant in the county, and people have it and can use it if they need it. So Monroe County has various different initiatives to address this opioid epidemic. Narcan is just one of the many. Trainings are available through here at the health department, as well as we dispatch to other locations to help with EMS or medical professionals or schools if interested. It's really just based on the community ask and the community need. Going
to Narcan training was incredibly insightful for me personally, because I hope that I'm never in a situation where I need to use my training, but to be trained and to be equipped with this knowledge is really quite an honor, I feel like, and it's something that's really important in our society, that more people are equipped with this capability to administer this drug.
In this day and age where we're relying more and more on the public to respond to critical incidents, it's very important that public citizens are looking at themselves and saying, right now, today, what can I do when that incident happens? You need to mentally prepare yourself for that. You can't get to that time and say, uh-oh, what am I going to do now? Because you're already in a bad place, and it's not the time to be there. You have to be prepared ahead of time. Understand that Narcan is a safe drug, and there's nothing that you can do to harm somebody by giving it to them. It would be no different than giving somebody who was dehydrated a glass of water. It's perfectly safe. And I think that there's a lot of apprehension when it comes to administering drugs, especially for a non-medical person. A lot of people don't want to be giving a medication to somebody not really fully understanding the effects of that medication, but we've known for years that Narcan is one of the safest drugs that we can administer out there. And if somebody was not suffering from an opiate overdose and you gave them Narcan, simply nothing would happen. So that's the beauty of Narcan. On the flip side, if somebody is suffering from an opiate overdose and you withhold giving Narcan, they very well may die. So it's a life-saving tool that we have.
I have a friend who last year was struggling with opioid addictions, and most of us didn't know how much he was struggling. We just thought that he was struggling with schoolwork and stuff like that, but it turns out that he was taking more and more drugs every day just to try and not get sick, because that's what happens when you're addicted to opioids. You have to take more of the opioid just to feel okay inside. And eventually he just wanted to stop fighting, and he decided to take his life by taking a abundance of opioids that he thought would kill himself, but luckily it didn't. But it was extremely scary for me and all his other close friends. But if he had died and if he had killed himself, everybody would have just remembered him as the guy who OD'd, the guy who overdosed, not the guy who loved art, the guy who loved making music, the guy who was a great time to hang out with, the guy who was my close friend, just somebody that loved life.